Hello everyone, it's Lorica here. Today I'm giving you an update on my literary reading plan. I got the idea from Candy from the Great Literary Rabbit Hole, and she's doing a DIY literary degree. And I am very intrigued by that. You might have seen me posted a few videos about that in the past, but I'm doing more of a literary reading plan because, yeah, it's a little bit too much for me to go into too deep. So I'm just doing a little bit of a high level. So what I've done is I had a plan, but it was a bit too complicated. So I've made it much more basic for myself. I've broken down into 4 sections what I want to focus on. And these sections are Gothic, the Bronte Sisters, magical realism slash witchy books slash books that aren't completely real, but it's not fantasy per se, and it's not sci-fi. It's I don't know how to describe it myself, but when I go through the books, then I guess you will see what I mean. And then the final number 4 is South African books. I've made a little list for myself, and I will, I hope you can find me. The camera sometimes loses me when I put up things. Anyway, I have this list broken down in the 4 areas, and I'm going to start just highlighting some of the Gothic books because I'm not going to go through all of them. It's just too much, right? So I'm going to read them. That's one thing I'm going to do with the Gothic books, is from when they were first published to the newer ones. And then, of course, if I find a book that I want to read that fits the Gothic, then I will just slot it in as it comes along. Yeah, so I'm going to start with one of the first Gothic books written that is classified as Gothic. And this is Anne Radcliffe's The Mysteries of Udolpho, which I haven't read yet. It's a chunker, but I'm looking forward to reading it. So I don't know when I'm going to do it yet, but this is the plan, right? It was written in 1794. So I'm very curious about it. So that is the one that's probably going to be my first Gothic read. And then next is my room find. I haven't even checked behind me. And then next is, let me just check. No, it's all good. Next is, then there's a whole list. Let's go for the next one. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which I think everybody knows. So that is on my list as well. Then there's the Brontes, a few Bronte books, which I'm going to cover the Brontes in the next section, but there will be a few of them because they're also Gothic. And then Wilkie Collins, Women in White, and Oscar Wilde's Picture of Dorian Gray. I don't have copies of these two. Then Bram Stoker's Dracula, which I recently read, so I might not read it again now. Really loved that book. It was so good. Oh my gosh, it was just such a beautiful book. And then 7 Gothic Tales by Isak Dinesen, which I have in my bookshelf, which I recently read as well. And then Daphne du Maurier. It's the 4 great Cornish novels that she wrote. And I think she, for me, is just a classic Gothic author. I love Daphne du Maurier because her books, her characters are just so completely, I've said this before, they're just unredeemable. I mean, they just, most of them are just completely not reliable. They are not such good people, quirky, and I just love it. So yeah, that's one of my favorite authors, I think, is Daphne du Maurier. And then also for the Gothic, now we're coming a bit more to the newer authors. Anne Rice, Interview with a Vampire, which I never read, so I'm quite excited about reading that. And then there is Susan Hill's Woman in Black, which I recently found on a second-hand bookshop, so hopefully it's coming online. And Little Stranger from Sarah Waters, and Mexican Gothic by J. Moreno Garcia, which is probably it's the latest one that I have on my list. 2020 it was written, and I actually read this book a while back already, and I really, really enjoyed it. So as you can see, it spreads a big time, and for now these are the books that I'm planning on reading, but I will add to it as time goes by. I am also looking at doing 2 poets. That's classic Gothic. One is Edgar Allan Poe, and then also Byron, Lord Byron. And then also to help me with the overview of Gothic, I don't have the book here, but I am reading, oh, there it is, hold on. The Gothic literature York Notes Companion. So all about the Gothic literature. So that's the Gothic section. I don't know if I talk too fast, but that is it. If it was a quick update. And then we're going to the Brontes. So I always loved the Brontes. They're my favorite sisters. And I've decided I'm only going to read their novels, and I'm also going to read books about them. So I have read, probably out of the 7 Bronte novels, I've read 4 or 5. I've read 5 of them. And I am going to reread all of them, and I'm going to reread them in order of publication. So Jane Eyre is one of my old books. I just love this copy. It's been around for a long time. So this is the first one. It was published in 1947. And then the next one was Agnes Grey, which I have on my Kindle. Also 1847, not 19, sorry. 1847, that was Jane Eyre and also Agnes Grey. And then Wuthering Heights is from Emily Bronte, and that was in 1847 as well. These three all came out in the same year, and Agnes Grey was written by Anne Bronte. And then the next one on the list is The Tenant of Wildfowl Hall, and that came out in 1848. I am obsessed with the 1900s, it seems. 1848, and it's another Anne Bronte novel, and I recently read this just last month, and I absolutely love this book. It was just so beautiful. And then Shirley came out from Charlotte by 1849, and then there was a little gap, and then Charlotte published Villette in 1853, and then The Professor came out in 1857. And she actually wrote The Professor, was the first book she wrote, but it was published only after her death. So I'm going to read it in order of publication, even though she wrote it before Jane Eyre. So that's my Bronte plan for reading the novels. And then I want to get books about the Brontes. Now, I don't have these books, so I'm looking for them at a super reasonable price. So I'm on the hunt, so to speak. And the first one is The Brontes by Juliet Barker, which was a book about them. And the second one is also by Juliet Barker, but this is called The Brontes, A Life in Letters, because I always love reading the letters of authors, because it's just like really interesting to see how they communicated in their daily lives. And then because I'm so surprised at how much I've liked Anne Bronte, I want to know more about her, because it feels to me she's the sister that's been left behind. And, her books are so powerful. So there's a book called In Search of Anne Bronte by Nick Holland. And I want to see if I can get a copy of that book somewhere. And then and a book that's intriguing for me, it's called The Bronte Cabinet, 3 Lives in 9 Objects. It's written by Deborah Lutz, and it takes certain objects from them that she writes about them, their lives in these objects. It just sounds like such an interesting book, doesn't it? So I'm going to see if I can get a hold of that book as well. And then there's 2 more. One of them is a fiction book, which is written by S.R. Whitehead, and it is called The Last Bronte, and it is a memoir, but it's fiction, by Arthur Bell Nichols, which was Charlotte Bronte's husband. So I'm curious, it just sounds intriguing to read that. So I'm going to see if I can find that. And then the last one is not a Bronte book, but it is an interesting book, I think, for me, because all these authors are intriguing. And it's by Christine Alexander, and it's called The Child Writer, From Austen to Woolf. And it has the Brontes, a chapter in there apparently about the Brontes as well. That is the Brontes section. I'm going to see if I can get these about Bronte books as well. Next is magical realism. So this for me is the one that I find hardest to define, because from what I understand, magical realism comes from most of the books has been written by Latin American authors. But there's magical realism is also Japanese authors, from Murakami amongst others. So I say magical realism, but I mean books, which is the definition of magical realism that I've read somewhere, is books that have based in reality, but they seamlessly slip these magical things in, like the book goes and suddenly a cat starts talking as if it's natural. It gets so seamlessly put into the book. So I like that. And I love books that has a witchy theme as well, kind of like a pagan vibe to them. So I'm going to put them together. I don't know if it's sacrilege for me to do that, but that's what I'm going to do. So the main books that I have is I'm going to read more of Murakami. Although I've read most of his books already, I'm going to reread a lot of them. And the one I think that shows magical realism from Murakami the best is his Kafka on the Shore book. This is the cover of it. This book is just absolutely beautiful. So Kafka on the Shore is based on this young boy who runs away from home, and he finds his way to a library. It's in Japan, and he starts to live in this library. He gets help, and he starts working in this library and lives in this library. But there's a lot more than that, of course, but that's the gist of it. So that's Kafka on the Shore. And another one that's a classic magical realism from Murakami is The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle, which is, I love that book so much. It's just such a good book. It's about this man that goes out looking for his cat that was lost, and then he gets a phone call from this strange lady, and we don't know if she's real or not. And then there's always, like in Murakami's books, cats, it seems. There's always some sort of thing with a cat. In Kafka on the Shore, the cats talk to this one guy. And in this book, he's looking for a cat that got lost, and he ends up in a what is that thing? You know, when you pull water out of a well, he ends up in a well. Like, it's like, yeah, I can't describe Murakami. You have to read it. It's just brilliant. So yeah, so that is Murakami. And then I'm looking at some of the Latin American authors, and I'm going to read The 100 Years of Solitude by Marquez, which was written in 1967. And then Isabel Allende's The House of Spirits, which was written in 1982. And this can also be classified as Gothic, so it overlaps the two, I believe. Laura Esquivel, Like Water for Chocolate, and Paulo Coelho's Veronica Decides to Die. I have read this book many years ago, and it really stayed with me, and I'm ready to reread it. So I will find a copy for myself. And then when I read up more about magical realism, one of the articles I read suggested that Franz Kafka's Metamorphosis can be seen as one of the first magical realism novels. So I'm just going to have a look at that, read it, and see how it feels to read it within this section. The other thing I forgot to mention, which is a book I'm busy reading, which is in the lounge, I don't have it on me, is that Murakami's favorite book is The Great Gatsby, and from F. Scott Fitzgerald. And he loves that book so much that he actually translated it into Japanese. And he says that is if there's one book, that's his book. So I thought, wow, okay, I got to read that so I can see what is the deal with this. Why is he so crazy about The Great Gatsby? And I started, and I'm super surprised because I thought that his writing and that writing would be very different. But there's a similar elements in Murakami's writing and Fitzgerald. I'm super surprised by that. I would not have thought so. But it's not that Scott Fitzgerald writes magical realism, but it's in the way he says things, in his style of writing. It's truly, I'm so enjoying The Great Gatsby because I'm reading it thinking of Murakami as writing, and it just gives another layer to the whole book for me. So really interesting. And then finally, it's been a long video, but finally is the South African novels. Now, you will probably find the list that I make is a little bit, because I am Afrikaans, right? So I'm trying to find my identity a little bit and see, where I come from and how do other people with my culture feel and think. So I like to read books by them, which is not necessarily always maybe 100% over 100% overview of independent, because I come from my perspective, right? So the books I'm looking at is, the first one is My Traitor's Heart by Rian Malan. And I read this book a long time ago, many years ago. This book was published in 1990 already. So I read this a long time ago, and I'm curious to get back to it. So it says, Rian Malan is an Afrikaner, a member of the clan that produced Daniel Francois Malan, or D.F. Malan, one of the master builders of apartheid, and General Magnus Malan, South Africa's Minister of Defense. In 1977, he fled his homeland to live in America, and 8 years later he returned home to face his country, his tribe, and his conscience, and to write My Traitor's Heart. Then we have Disgrace by J.M. Coetzee, which was written in 1999, which was just after apartheid came to an end. And I'm just want to reread it. I know it's a heavy book, so I will see how I go with that. And then I also have a book for years now called Country of My Skull by Antjie Krog, which I also read and reread and referenced many times for myself. And it was written in, when did she write this book? In 1998. And it goes like this, also non-fiction. The first free elections in South Africa's history were held in 1994. Within a year, legislation was drafted to create a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to establish a picture of the gross human rights violations committed between 1960 and 1993. It was to seek the truth and make it known to the public and to prevent these brutal events from ever happening again. And from 1996 and over the following 2 years, South Africans were exposed almost daily to revelations about their traumatic past. Antjie Krog's full account of the Commission's work using the testimonies of oppressed and oppressors alike is a harrowing and haunting book in which the voices of ordinary people shape the course of history. So it was an interesting time for me as a South African to be in South Africa and to watch the news every night with all these stories that we didn't know what was going on. I was very young during apartheid, and to see what happened. I'm curious to reread that book again. And then there's a couple of books I don't have. I'm not even going to go there. But there's another one, which is The Bang Bang Club. It's the next book. And I think there was a movie that was made out of it a while back. It's based on photographers during this, that took photographs around apartheid time. They were 4 young photographers who covered the township war in South Africa in the early 1990s. And then the last one is A Human Being Died That Night, Forgiving Apartheid's Chief Killer. And it was written by Pumla Gobodo Madikizela, sorry. And she's a psychiatrist or psychologist, and she interviewed Eugene de Kock, which was the head of the South African death squads. And he was sentenced to 212 years for crimes against humanity. His nickname was Prime Evil. And so there's this lady, this Pumla, and she wanted to talk to him. So she had questions about the nature of vengeance and forgiveness. During many hours of conversations, the Kock and Gobodo Madikizela, a trained clinical psychologist, take a remarkable shared journey to the meaning of responsibility and the limits of remorse. This book is really interesting. I mean, you can see how many, I have so many notes and stuff that I referenced in here for, I just show you. I mean, it's everywhere. I used this book a lot as a reference for my first novel that I wrote. That is it. And then, of course, I'm reading The Afrikaners, which is a biography about the South African people, or the Afrikaner people and where they come from. This is my plan. It's a very long video and there's a lot of things in here. I don't know if many people are going to watch it, but I decided to make it for myself so that I can reference back to it and see over time how many books I have read. So I have my little list here, and I'm going to get books added to it, and maybe some books I might take off. And it's going to take me a few years, I think, to work through this, because some books are very heavy. It's not something I'm going to read every day, some of these books, especially the South African ones. It's super heavy books. But if I take one at a time and slowly work through it, I think I will get it. Yeah, so that is it. So let me know what you think. Is it? Are you busy with some sort of literary reading plan? And yeah, I just want to say that this is not all the books I'm going to read, because I like to do impulse reading, as you know. So I keep on doing my other impulse reading and just pick up these books from time to time. That's why it will take me a few years, I think, to get through this, because it's not something I'm going to read every day. It's just going to be on my there, so that I can just, oh, okay, oh yeah, I want to read that book, like that kind of vibe, right? But I want to get all of them. I have a lot of them already. Just get a few more, and then I have a little shelf with all of them, and I can just take as I feel. So yeah, I thank you if you got to this far. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.